So to begin, we're going to start with just a classic mushroom shape. So you've got your edible icing, and if you've ever worked with this before, it comes out quite dry, and you just need to sort of work it in your hands and get it warm and sort of rounded to get rid of any cracks. The first bit we're going to make is the stipe or the stem. So you probably only want a small bit to start with. So again, just work it in your hands, and then you'll gently want to pinch down very gently just one end, and using your other hand to sort of flatten out the base. And you can see we just need to make that a little bit longer. So then sometimes on the board, you just gently roll so that it tapers down one end, so you're putting pressure on one end and not the other, and then you can use your fingers again to sort of create it up, and just make sure that it's nice and flat on the base by placing it on your board. And there you go, essentially you have your stipe. Now on this one, because I'm going to probably decorate this one like a fly agaric, which is what all of these are modelled on, the classic toadstool. I wanted to add a veil or skirt underneath, which the species has, but that is absolutely optional. And if you feel like maybe you want to start more basic, then you don't need to do that bit. If, however, you are feeling a little bit more adventurous and you want to do that, then you simply roll out a nice, long, thin sausage shape until you have enough that's going to go around. And then you just press it between your fingers to flatten it out. And once you have a roughly sort of flat shape, this is where I pick up one of my tools. And I've got this one, which has got these lovely ridges, which sort of creates the sort of pleated edge to it. Equally, you could use just a little knife to create little marks. I just find that this one works quite well. And at this point, I'm going to need to take my edible glue, just dab a little bit around the stem or the stipe, where I can then place on the skirt until we've got meet the other side, and then I just pinch it off. And what I will then do is just using my fingernails to flick up the bottom of the skirt so it's not stuck down all the way around, and that gives you a nice little skirt underneath. Now to work on the cap, you want to take another sort of good sizable bit, probably a little bit more. You might need to find that you kind of work on your proportions. Bear in mind, I've gone for all similar sizes, about this size, because the cupcakes I'm working with are more like fairy cakes, they're quite small. If you're working with much bigger cakes, then maybe you want to increase the sort of size of the mushrooms that you're making. So again, I'm just working it in my hands, nice and warm. I've obviously washed my hands very well before this. And then I just work it between my thumb and my forefinger with my other sort of thumb and middle finger. That's what I preference sort of use, but you can do whatever you want. And I work it round into a nice sort of dome shape. And my thumb is creating a sort of slightly concave shape underneath. But obviously fungi come in all shapes and sizes, particularly their caps at different stages, so it doesn't matter. Now, if you want to, you can simply go to sticking this on. However, I quite like to, on some of them, create the gills underneath, just because I'm going for a little bit more accuracy here. So again, you just take another bit, but much smaller this time, make it into a rough circle shape, where you then pinch it out to be nice and flat until you have what matches the size here. You just have to keep going back and forward to make sure that they match. And then I add a little bit of edible glue to the base of this. And then before I stick this one down, again, I'm using my tool to create the little gills underneath. Now, as you then work it, you will lose some of that definition because you're then having to sort of carry on with it and stick it down. but you will keep some of it, which looks nice. And then simply for the underneath, I use this other tool just to create a sort of indent in the middle, where I can then apply some more edible glue, apply some to the stipe, and then marry the two together. On this one, maybe my gills were a little bit too large, but that's okay. And then essentially we can leave it just like this to dry. Now what you might find is that gravity likes to play a part, and over time the cap starts to slide off, so you just might need to readjust it. Or you could use an egg tray or something where there's some slight movement underneath, so you can balance it in a position where it's likely to dry. But essentially, just as long as you keep it upright, that should dry nice and hard. If you find though that you're having to use the other type of the fondant that takes longer to dry, and it just really isn't drying and all your tops are falling off and you're getting to a point where you're just getting a bit annoyed, then you can use cocktail sticks to push through or from underneath to keep them together, and then that's quite useful for putting into the cupcakes themselves. But please remember to take them out before you give them to somebody to eat, or warn them and tell them to remove the cocktail stick, because the last thing you want is for somebody to bite down on a cocktail stick in their mouth. It wouldn't be very nice. So that is the first one we've made. If you decided that you would like to go a little bit more adventurous with some of your designs, then you could start looking up some other options. So for example, I have made a little set of 3 bracket fungi that I'm going to put on the top of a cupcake, just like this, which I'm going to paint nicely, and that will look quite fun. Other things that I have made here, I've made a little Earthstar, which is a type of puffball. I have also made a pink or ballerina wax cap, so just sort of split it as I put it on, so that's going to be fun. And I've even made probably the one fungi that I'm still desperate to see, which is the bird's nest fungi. So I've made these little cups, and again I will be painting all of these. So you can go completely different. I thought I might show you how to make maybe a morel. I'm going to make a little small one to go with this so it can be on a cupcake together. So here's the one I made earlier. Now pretty much all of them, other than the sort of bracket fungi and things, start in a very similar way. We're going to make the stipe first. So again, just work the icing to warm it up in your hand. It's worth noting that if you've got a bit that you're working with from, you might want to keep it wrapped up in something to keep the air from it, because it does dry out extremely quickly and then it can be difficult to work with. You might be wondering why I'm using white where I could be using colour, and that's because I think a more realistic effect is achieved when using the edible paints on the white icing. But you could start with, say, a brown if you wanted, or mix the individual colours as you're going along. I just find that that takes a long time, and I quite enjoy the painting bit afterwards. So, right, we work with what we've got here, just a little bit smaller because I'm making a smaller one, and we'll just taper it into the stipe like before. So I probably want a bit less than that actually, and that's okay. So I'm making a little one to go with this one. There we go. So we've got our little stipe, and then for the bit that goes on top, for the morel, again we've got to work the icing, and then we simply start to sort of create a slightly triangular or bell shape here, and this is where I then, using one of my tools, I just push this up. You can use that one or this one, it's up to you, where I then get another tool that I can then create the kind of wiggly shapes where the outside of the morel is folded all the way around. So we just push the tool in. Again, you could use a butter knife or something to achieve this as well. I just like the fact that this one was already curved. And there we go. And then what I will do is get some edible glue, place it inside, and then I'll push this on. And then I start to just gently enclose it around the bottom as morels sort of come together at the base rather than being sort of spread out like a ballerina wax cap. And there, once that's painted up, we will have a mini morel. If, however, doing it this way and handcrafting the fungi isn't quite what you would like to do, there are other options for creating a fungi cupcake. So I got this silicone mould, hopefully you can see that. I got that very cheaply, I think it was £2 for this. I got it from a local shop, but you can probably get them online as well. And I simply filled it with some melted white chocolate, left them in the fridge, and then here we go, I've got some lovely little mushrooms that I've popped out, and you can just decorate your cupcakes with those, and you could do obviously dark chocolate, milk chocolate, etc., and that would be fine. Alternatively, you can also buy cutters that are fungi shaped, and you could just roll out some biscuits and make your own fungi biscuits, or even cut out icing to put on cupcakes that way. So there's lots of different options out there for making some wonderful fungi cupcakes. We'd absolutely be delighted if you could share your best fungi bakes with us on all the usual social media locations, and we would love to see them. Let's have our own Plantlife fungi bake-off, shall we? With these chocolate ones, you can even paint them in exactly the same way as we did these, so absolutely easy as that. So we've got things like the bracket fungi, we've got the blackening wax cap, we've got the scarlet elf cups, the Earthstar, this one over here that looks a bit like a red starfish is the devil's fingers, non-native fungi that we get over here. Got some chanterelles there, the bird's nest fungi, white spindles, and down here at the front we've got one of our cordyceps species, which is the scarlet caterpillar club fungus, where it parasitizes a caterpillar underground, which is really rather amazing. So all sorts of species here.